Hello, I'm Joel Blackford with Beth Kesed Sabbath Fellowship, and I'm asking you what time it is on God's clock. We are in chapter 17. We're in the last half of that. We're going to be discussing the beast, the therion, as I call them in the Greek. And we're also going to be discussing other aspects of this, some things that are pervasive right now, like yeast, okay? Yeast can be good, but yeast can be bad, and people know how to use yeast, therion, to spread a cult. Okay, so we'll go through this and see what happens. First, we need to discuss the two systems going on here. As we look in the Old Testament, especially in Daniel, we see in chapter 8 the grease that shaggy goat is beating up on the ram system, okay? So I'm arguing that they're both clean animals. They're both animals that are designed for sacrifice, but they're the leaders of, say, Greece, Medo-Persia, or in this case, it would be the beast system versus the whore system, okay? And so the beast is going to be number one. Greece, or the beast, is going to be number one. It wins out in the end, okay? And so it's beastly. We'll just discuss it. Okay, so war. There will be a war. The beast hates and destroys the whore to be the sole survivor. Daniel 8. Okay, I was beginning to understand when a male goat, that shaggy goat, the therion, the beast, the Antichrist, we could call him, came from the west, which is the typical direction from him to come by, passing over the whole earth without touching it, kind of like Alexander. The goat had a prominent horn between its eyes, and it approached the ram. That would be that harlot system, the zona, as we said in the Hebrew, and it would be a mixed system with the two horns. And I would say that the Pope might be involved in it, and kind of a conglomeration of many faiths involved in it, and I'll explain that later on, which I had seen standing in front of the river and charged it with savage force. I watched it as it advanced on the ram, filled with rage against it, struck the ram, breaking its two horns. The ram was powerless to stand against it. It threw the ram to the ground and trampled it down, and there was no one that could rescue it from the shaggy goat's power. The male goat became exceedingly strong, but when it was strong, the big horn was broken. And so that kind of is that death aspect of this beast, Antichrist. And in place rose what appeared to be four horns in the directions of the four winds of the heaven. Out of them came a little horn, which grew extremely big and was boastful. That's that Antichrist part of that, okay? In the directions of the south and the east, and in the direction of the glory of Israel. Okay, so we've linked it with the past and the future. Yes, it is Medo-Persia losing out to Greece, but yes, it is the beast system, I believe, defeating the whore system, because this amalgamated whore system that we're part of right now, that the therion are feeding, and I'll explain that better, don't worry, just stick with me on this, stick through the video, okay? And you'll see why this needs to occur. So, just like Nimrod's time, as for the 10 horns you saw, and the beast, therion number 8, they will hate the whore. Why? Because they want to be the only system surviving. They'll bring her to ruin, leave her naked, eat her flesh, consume her with fire. Okay, why is a zona burned? In most cases, it's the high priest or a Cohen's daughter. For God put it in their hearts to do what will fulfill his purpose. That is to be of one mind, that's like saying Nimrod, and give their kingdom to the beast. That's therion number 9. That's the last one. Give their kingdom to the beast until God's words have accomplished their intent. And the woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. So that judgment, so it's odd. You'll say, okay, we've got this false harlot religion being defeated by the beast system. That's how it works, okay? That's how the system occurs. And God is glorified by this. It doesn't necessarily make sense. It's not going to be pretty. But one system will defeat the other system, just like Greece defeated Medo-Persia. Okay, there are many different Babylons, but let's try to deal with this a little bit. Nimrod's ancient Babylon is present-day Iraq, okay? And it's pretty much desolate right now. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon is the head of gold, which is interesting. There's Babylon the Great. There's Mystery Babylon. That could be Rome, New York, maybe London. It could be many different places. There's the daughter of Babylon. You'll see that in a couple of chapters. There's spiritual Babylon. This is from Schofield. Spiritual Babylon, Edom, Rome. There's political Babylon, or ecclesiastical Babylon. There are many different types of Babylon. We'll try to figure out which one is which in this case. Okay? Babylon's not hidden. You see these towers that were, and now they are. And so what was there years ago with the original Babylon dies off, and then it seems to come back again at the end. So that may be that was and is, was and now died, and then is and will be. So keep that in mind, okay? This is in Strasbourg, France. When we talk about this united beast system, we have to reference Nimrod. So we're going to do a couple of chapters, 10 and 11, from Genesis to be able to discover more about Nimrod. Nimrod was the first powerful, I'm saying witchcraft, ruler on earth. He was a mighty hunter before the face, literally lifnei, in the face of Adonai. This is why people say, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter, lifnei, in the face of Adonai, confronting him, okay? And you don't do that, you lose. His kingdom began with Babylon, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. That's Babylon, okay, but that's another mystery name for it. Ashur went out from that land and built Nineveh, the city of Rehovot, and Kelach. Okay, continuing on to chapter 11, the people are united in this Babylon. They said, come, let us build for ourselves a city with a tower, this beast city and beast tower, with the top reaching up to heaven, so that we can make a name for ourselves and not be scattered all over the earth. Adonai came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. Adonai said, look, the people are united. They have all a single language, and see what they're starting to do. At this rate, nothing they set out to accomplish will be impossible to them. Come, let's, that's plural, go down and confuse their language, so that they won't understand each other's speech. So from there, Adonai scattered them all over the earth, and they stopped building the city. For this reason, it's called Babel, confusion, because Adonai confused the language of the whole earth, and from there Adonai scattered them all over the earth. Okay, so I'm arguing that there's a witchcraft system, a whore system going on with Nimrod, as he is mighty in the face of God, and he united the people for a common horrible goal. But you're seeing that again in Revelation 17. You're seeing the same Nimrod thing, the same beast system that was dead, and it seems to be coming back again. Okay, this is how Psalms describes this. The daughter of Babylon, you will be destroyed. A blessing on anyone who pays you back for the way you treated us. A blessing on anyone who seizes your babies and smashes them against a rock. That's a tough verse to swallow, but the problem is this whore system is so horrific, you don't want it to continue on. You want it to die, and it dies in chapter 17 and 18. It is destroyed by, of all people, the beast, the Antichrist, we'll call him. Okay, Zechariah explains it this way. Up, says Adonai, move, flee from the land of the north, flee the land of the north, for I scattered you like the four winds of the sky, says Adonai. Move, Zion, who are living and with the daughter of Babylon, escape, for Adonai Tezvaot has sent me on a glorious mission to the nations that plundered you. And this is what he says, anyone who injures the injured, or injures you, injures the very pupil of my eye. So we see this daughter of Babylon, and we'll continue on, and I'll give you a reason why I think the daughter of Babylon is critical and important, and that children aspect. Okay? So there's an epic battle between the false prophet and his religion of Babylon, and the beast, you call him the Antichrist, vying for ultimate power. The beast wins for a moment. I'm arguing that the high priest's daughter, or a priest's daughter, either way, he's a Cohen, a Zona, that would be that prostitute, must die, but first the Therion hastened her demise, okay? And the Therion is that beast system that seems to be like yeast, just spreading. Why do they eat and burn the whore? So let's discuss it. Based on rule number one, possibility number one of burning somebody. And it's very rare. Normally you stone people in the Torah. You do not burn them, okay? This is part of the holiness code in Leviticus, which are hukim, and they're things that you do. They're righteous, but we don't understand why. Okay, so let's just read it and try to apply it. If a man goes to bed with a man, as he does with a woman, both of them, that's homosexuality, they're committing an abomination. They must be put to death. But that would be by stoning in this case, if anybody ever did that. But if a man marries a woman and her mother, this is a depravity. They're to be put to death by fire, burned, both he and they, so that they will not be a depravity among you. That's the first way that you would burn the mother, daughter, and this man. Seems to match. Or in this case, a Cohen is not to marry a woman who is a prostitute, a Zona, okay, who has been profaned or who has been divorced, but he is holy for his God. Rather, you are to set him apart as holy, because he offers the bread of your God. He is to be holy for you, because I, Adonai, who makes you holy, am holy. The daughter of the Cohen who profanes herself by prostitution, Zonah, profanes her father. She is to be put to death by fire. Once again, this is extremely rare. These are the two reasons why you could burn somebody, and you're going to see that Babylon is burned. And so I want Paul's opinion on this in his book to Timothy, why this quickens the end of this harlot system. The Spirit expressly states that in the Acharith HaYomim, that's the end of days in Hebrew, some people will apostatize from the faith by paying attention to deceiving spirits and things taught by demons, that's Therion-driven viruses spread by quickly laying on of hands. Such teachings come from the hypocrisy of liars whose own consciences has been burned as if by a red-hot branding iron. Okay, we're continuing on with this concept of the Therion, and I'm going to try to explain more to you. It's 9 times in chapter 17, and I'm saying 9 is the Hebrew word tate, okay? Tate, whatever, okay? 9 times, and that's the 9th letter. It means 9 if you study Gematria. And that particular letter, if you go back to the Paleo, looks like a viper, a Therion, coiled in a basket. Yeah, that's interesting. It seems to tie together with what we're dealing with in chapter 17. So now I'll actually explain Therion to you, since I listed it off 9 times. I want you to understand it better. So it's a Greek word, 2342. It denotes a venomous animal and is applied to a viper. So when Paul is shaking off this guy into the fire in Acts 28, and they think, you know, he just survived a horrific shipwreck, and then this guy bites on him and he shakes him off, the Therion, you know, that's what happens. So, and also you'll find it in Revelation 11:7 as the first and the second beasts which rise up. They're called Theria, okay, or Therion, from the bottomless pit, and they kill off the martyrs, okay, and then one from the sea in 13:1, making war upon the 2 witnesses, and opening his mouth in blasphemies form parts of this hellish symbolism. Therefore, Therion brings out the predominance of the lower animal life, viral microbes, you could say. Most scholars agree with this. Zohaides is a brilliant Greek scholar. And so if he says lower animal life, and I say viral microbes, or biological warfare for that matter too, it can never be applied to glorious creatures in the very court and the presence of heaven, okay? So this is lower forms of animal life, okay? And it also matches up with the viper, and we'll read that in a moment. Okay, so Therion, the beast, is a viral antichrist spirit. Therion beast is a viral false prophet, harlot type system that's fed along by the Therion. It's a viral end times religion or governments. It's viper-like viruses, okay? And it poaches believers into these antichrist cults that sound like Jesus, okay? So we're going to have a little bit of fun here where people will come to you, these antichrist cults, and they'll say, oh, it's Jesus. Hey, kids, you want a box of Jesus? No, this is Therion. And I hope you can read this. This is not Jesus, okay? They hyper-actualize the harlot's faith. And this is a box of Therion. This is a box of falsehood. You don't want to listen to these people when they come to you and they say, hey, are you sick? Let me lay hands on you. No, don't quickly let anybody lay hands on you, and don't let them transfer their sins upon you. That's what they want to do. They want you to believe just because you don't feel very good that they should lay hands on you. Don't let them do it. They are transferring the Therion. They're biting you like a Therion when they're doing so. And we'll discuss it more. Let's go back and find the viper that was hanging on to Paul. So Paul gathered a bundle of sticks and was adding them to the fire after the shipwreck, when a poisonous snake, driven out by the heat, fastened itself to his hand. And the islanders saw the creature, the Therion, hanging from Paul's hand, and said to one another, this man must be a murderer. Even though he escaped the sea, justice has not allowed him to live. But they shook the snake off. He shook it off and fell into the fire, and he didn't die. That's a miracle. Okay, that's a Therion. So what I want you to be aware of is that this is, oh, I'm sorry, I lost my microphone. Well, let's see if we can finish up with this. So anyway, I need to be careful with my Therion beast. Pardon me. There it is. Okay. There we go, we're back. Okay, and so justice has not allowed him to live, but he shook it off and suffered no after effects. Okay. The other weird thing about Therion is Dan, okay? The name means judge, okay? Well, Dan will judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan will be a viper on the road, a horned snake That's very similar to therion. When I looked at it in the Septuagint, it was so close. I can't say it exactly means it, but that's how God works too. I dig and dig and dig, and sometimes maybe I'll figure it out in a year. But on the path that bites the horse's heels, you never want to fall backwards, okay? And that's what happens. You want to fall forward in the presence of the Lord. So the vipers bite at the horse's heels. Normally, the horse's noses are bit, okay? That's what a viper would bite to asphyxiate. But in this case, he's biting at the heels to make the rider fall off backwards. But yet, I wait for Yeshua deliverance in this case, okay? It's an odd blessing to Dan in the end of Genesis there. There's this therion connection to it. Okay, so just keep it in mind. Okay, I'm arguing these cults that have died off, and they are back again, and they're therion driven this time, okay? So whatever beast system this is, and I don't want to knock my mic off again, it's coming back again, and they look pretty this time around. So these are guys that I thought were okay, and then I did some more research, and they're not good guys, okay? So this is Bethel from California, Redding, California, not the Bethel down the block from me in St. Paul, and this is IHOP in Kansas City. They're transferring this therion around, okay, like laying on hands, healing rooms, things like that. Be very, very careful when you go to these places. I call it Kajong Jesus, okay, where they're literally using energy. So they'll say, can you feel the energy pass from this hand to this hand? Well, this is a joke. This is Kajong. This is yoga. This is all that other crud that makes you sicker in the long run. So be careful. The first guy on the left-hand side is Todd White, and he is saying to people, I heal you, not God. He literally claims credit for that, okay? He's one of these guys, okay? Bill Johnson in the middle. He's saying you need to spread out like yeast and take over people, okay? And spread into their system, literally like therion. He is comparing the therion to yeast. And then Mike Bickle, I used to like him, then I realized his buddy is Paul Kane, who is just a horribly sick, deviant man. And so that's who's giving him some of the information. I do a lot of research to come up with what I know. These guys are getting it through other spirits, okay? So be wary of these guys as they merge this weird religion in the end times, this therion-based religion, okay? All right, so this is a quote from Bill Johnson. This will scare you enough right there. Bethel's highly coveted book, The Physics of Heaven. It states that they believe the New Age stole our healing practices from Christianity, and they, the den of the New Age gurus, intend to steal them back. Now, you know what? They're just repackaging it, okay? As I mentioned before, this is not a box of good food. This is not Jesus, okay? This is what they want you to believe in. This is a box of therion, okay? Okay, so Nimrod unified the whole world against God, and idolatry and mysticism. It's spreading this beast system, this therion, but they're repackaging, re-energizing this new age again and kicking it into hyper overdrive with therion, okay? It's idolatry, it's mysticism, it's called Jesus, and heals and transforms people. It does, for a temporary period of time, but then you're even more sick afterwards, and I've watched it with people that I know where they were miserable and they didn't ask for prayer from godly people. They asked for these people, these yoga people, these Kundalini people. And the Kundalini, have you ever seen the people doing the Kriyas? Okay, that's bad. That's not of God. Watch out for that. It happened in the Old Testament. You just don't know the Greek to be able to get back to it and find it there, but it was there, okay? The prophets of Baal, they're cutting themselves, okay? We know what they were doing. There was the Kriyas and things like that. They are in another spirit, okay? So that's the prophets of Baal against Eliyahu out on Mount Carmel. 450 of them, and he wipes them out. One guy, okay? Okay, they're trying to open your third eye, which is up here. Remember we talked about that before? That's that hard head right there, and trying to open that thing up and uncoil the snake. That's why I'm wearing the snake the way I am. They're trying to uncoil the snake from your back, and that viper virus, that therion, kick it out, okay? They're using something I labeled Kajong healing, which is not healing, okay? It is just moving energy around. It's a temporary healing, and it masks the symptoms, and it really produces death in the long term, okay? It opens your third eye to this viper-like virus, this yeast-like virus, okay? Contemplative prayer. This is just mumbo jumbo. It's transcendental meditation, okay? You're opening yourself up to the spirit world, and you're opening yourself up to this viper virus, okay? Beware of the spirit guides, trances, meditation, auras, power objects, and clairvoyances. The emergent church, it opens you up to a hyper-spirituality, and the Word should do that. You should be open to God's Spirit, not to some fake spirits, okay? And those spirits are roaming around looking for you, okay? There's the Therion, out there like yeast, trying to be spread onto you. Don't let these people lay hands on you, okay? It's a virus. When they quickly lay hands on you, they're transferring spirits unaware. The speed of the Therion spread viral deceit is intensifying. I call it charismania, okay? So there is charismata, which is good, which is talking in tongues or prophetics or other gifts of the Spirit. Picking up trash in your church is a gift from God. But then there's charismania. Be very, very careful for that. Watch out. Okay, Hitler, a master at this. Therion change is gradual. He said this in his chapter, The Capturing of the Mind in Mein Kampf. The best way to take control over a people and control them utterly is to take a little bit of their freedom at a time, mix a little new age, so to speak, to erode their rights by 1,000 tiny and almost imperceptible reductions. In this way, the people will not see those rights and freedoms being removed until way past the point at which those changes cannot be reversed. He changed his country with, what, 2 or 3% of the vote, okay? And he changed it to kill Jews and to start World War II. What a wicked and evil Therion-based man. Okay. Bethel sends out these disciples, and they're sending them into your coffee shops. They're spreading like yeast. They want to lay hands on you. I've seen this personally at my coffee shop where we have a Bible study. They walked in there and they said, "We want to pray for you." We said, not so much. They said, "We want to lay hands on you. You're sick, right?" We said, "No, we're fine." They said, "Well, we want to do that." We said, "We want to read the Bible with you." They said, "We're not so cool on that." Okay? So they want to lay hands on you and transfer these energies, these spirits onto you. Don't let them do that. If somebody walks into a coffee shop, don't let them lay hands on you. Just say no. Okay? Just like drugs. They spread like yeast into your youth groups. They really are going after the youth. By our U of M here, every Friday night, they have one of these cult-like get-togethers where they're trying to indoctrinate our kids and just take them all over. You know, we bring them into the church, or actually sometimes we don't even get after our kids because we're so interested in how bad the world is that we don't understand these kids are just looking for God. So they're going after them. The Therion is going after our kids right now, and they're indoctrinating them. Sent to churches to twist the Bible verses. I watched a guy, my buddy called him a healer dude. He showed up and he twisted about 7 to 10 verses. Then he said, "Okay, now put one hand above the other hand and transfer energy between that. Now go find somebody else, and you don't have to know who that person is, and start transferring energy from your hand to their hand." It's like, this is sick and twisted. God's Spirit is not a parlor trick. You don't just play games with God. But this is what they're doing, and they think it's a big joke. So don't let them do that. Don't let them twist the verses, okay? These healing rooms, they're saturated like yeast with Eastern holistic wellness and psychic healing and self-healing and prayer cloths and yoga and Kajong Jesus and crystals and divination and acupuncture. Tarot cards, Christian tarot cards. What? Yeah, they have them. And praying to angels. That's bad too, or praying to Mary for that matter too. The results are positive and temporary. Jesus is eternal. So when you pray to God, the healings are eternal. Okay, let's talk about some other guys, the reformers, that came against the Therion during their generation. And I'm not saying that these guys are the greatest guys in the history of the world, but they declared that the Pope was the Therion beast, okay? So they're saying, watch out for the Pope. This is their opinions. John Calvin, we call the Roman Pontiff Antichrist. Luther, I know that the Pope is the Antichrist and that his seat is the seat of Satan himself, okay? The papacy is a general chase by command of the Roman Pontiff for the purpose of running down and destroying the souls. And they did kill many, many people. They didn't kill those two guys. They didn't kill Wesley, but they did kill some wonderful reformers. Said he, emphatic sense, the man of sin, as he increases all manner above measure, and he was talking about the Pope at that point in time, and Knox said the Pope should be recognized as that very Antichrist. This is their opinion. This is where the reformers started out because they were coming against the papal system and trying to reform. They didn't reform as far as I would want them to reform, but they did reform. Okay, this is a Jesuit insider, and the Pope today, Pope Frank, is a Jesuit, okay? So normally there's a black Pope and a white Pope. He is kind of both, okay, because he's a Jesuit. Normally the Jesuits are the black Pope running the business side of it, and the white Pope is more the guy that you see. Malachi Martin had a comment about this. He said, this archbishop is a good bishop, and his contention that there are Satanists in Rome is completely correct. And he was killed for this comment, okay? He died right after this. Anybody who is acquainted with the state of affairs in the Vatican the last 35 years as well is aware that the Prince of Darkness has had and still has his surrogates in the court of St. Peter of Rome. And he was killed for that comment. Okay, these are two people. The guy on the right is Chris Putnam. The guy on the left is Tom Horn. I know Putnam. I knew him. He died. He was able to gain access to certain Roman Catholic secrets, and he wrote about paranormal powers, principality, spirits, and he also wrote an interesting book about the final pope. He was a dogged researcher, an incredible researcher, and he died after publishing those things of a mysterious death. Sometimes you don't want to get too close to these things, the Therions. He wrote Petrus Romanus, okay, where he predicted in the spring of 2012 that the Pope would resign. And it was announced internally in the spring of 2012 that he would resign based on Chris doing excellent research. And then it was finally formally announced in 2013 as I'm sorry, I thought I had a picture of it, I don't, but as lightning struck on the Vatican twice on that particular day. Okay, so I'm arguing that the Therion has mothers and daughters, and they pull all these people together. These people don't know God, other than the Greek guy. I like my Greek Orthodox fellows and the Russian Orthodox. They may not preach revelation, but they sure do know their Bible very, very well. And I can't understand why he is standing there arm in arm with the Pope, with all of these other people that believe in mysticism and all the things the Bible tells us not to believe in. So what I'm telling you is that you won't always notice the cult. You're not going to see the blazing eyes, the crazy little kids that, say, we are from a cult. They're not going to do that, okay? They're going to say that they serve this lamb just like Jesus, okay? But it's not this lamb, okay? So be careful. They're not going to expose themselves. They're not going to show themselves to be cult-like. They're not going to be saying, oh, I serve the God of the world, okay? They're going to look like these people. Some of these people seem like nice people. Tony Palmer, way off to the left. James, I'm blanking on James' last name, seems to be a godly guy. I'm not so much of a fan of some of the other people on the other side of the Pope. But Tony Palmer, he died right after this. So he negotiated this meeting, and then somehow mysteriously he died on a motorcycle accident. Isn't it interesting how people do these works for the Lord of the world, so to speak, and then die off right after that, okay? Very odd. Your pastors aren't going to tell you, this is Creflo Dollar. He's worth multi-millions of dollars. He's not going to tell you about his mugshot and the beating that he did for his daughter, rather. And Katie Souza isn't going to show you her mugshots either. These are people that are operating off the Therion, and you have to dig to figure out that they're not godly, okay? They just want your money, okay? Therion just wants your money. They want you oppressed, okay? Benny Hinn. Paula Jones, by the way, she is the consultant to the president, okay? So this is them having an affair in Italy or whatever, Spain, years ago, and he's married at that point in time and she's divorced, but still they're having the affair together. So she is doing what a Zona would do. You know what that means. I've explained it now, okay? And she's the president's consultant. That's his godly advisor right there having that affair. She never apologized for this at all. They got caught. And this, they're not going to tell you that they're beasts, okay? They're just not going to tell you they're Therion, okay? This is another case. This is Bethel of Redding, California. This is called the Glory Cloud. It's a Therion cloud. It's fake, okay? They just kicked up the HVAC system and kicked some gold dust into it and then called it, something important. But here's the problem. If this is actually God's kavodo, which is the holiness of God, there's not going to be any selfies or self-adulation. They're going to fall flat on their face. But instead, they stood there and went, cool dude, and toking on Holy Ghost smoke or whatever they call it, These are hippies preaching Therion and laying hands on you and converting you into an anti-God system, okay? If you're around the holiness of God, you're flat on your face and you're frightened because it's so holy. This is just props and tricks and other silly Therion stuff, okay? Ezekiel states it this way: Babylon will be judged for all of these adulteries and murders and all these other things. I will pronounce on you the sentence that applies to women who commit adultery and murder. I will bring on you the death decreed for furious jealousy. Yes, I will hand you over to them, and I will make you a ruin of your platforms, your idolatry, tear down your high places of idolatry, strip you of your clothes, take away your jewels, leave you naked and exposed. They will also bring up a mob against you of the Therion, who will stone you to death and hack you to pieces and probably eat you and burn your houses to the ground and execute judgments against you. In the presence of many women, I will stop the fornicating and the idolatry, and you will never again pay for a lover. Now we're back in Revelation 16 to explain what's going on during this time frame of the Therion falling. So Jerusalem is split three ways. The great city is split in three parts. The cities of the nations fell, and God remembered Babel the Great and made her drink the wine from the cup of his raging fury. Every island fled, and no mountains were to be found. A huge 70-pound hailstones fell on people from the sky, but the people cursed God for the plague of hail. This is that time of Babylon being judged, and God is telling us when it occurs. This is late in the bowls, okay, right at the end, as Jesus is almost ready to return. Okay, the message is bittersweet. I've mentioned this throughout every topic that I've talked about. It's bittersweet in terms of we kill the prophets and we stone those that God has sent to us, but he wants to gather us. He wants to fellowship with us. But unfortunately, we don't know how to say Baruch haba b'shem Adonai, which is blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. It's all focused on restoring Genesis 1 through 3. Now, as we move along, as we get into 19, 20, 21, 22, you're going to see that restoration occurring, and you're going to see the new heaven and the new earth after the marriage supper of the Lamb. We've finished the seals. We finished the trumpets. We finished the bowls last chapter. We are completing Babylon in chapter 18 next. And that is the end, and thank you for spending time with me. Good night.